what you like, you know. Take a stroll if you want, but the camera is there.
Yeah, it's a nice day.
We should have done it outside.
I don't think we have anything to stretch. Hello, welcome to an episode of Ashley Haden's Political Breakdown, pointless self-indulgent show where I talk about the week's news with people I respect and some that I don't. This week I've got people I respect, so it should be a fun one. My guests this week are...
Alexander Bennett.
And...
Athena Kugblenu.
Delightful. Who's got a story to start with then? Athena, why don't you go first?
Alright, I want to start with these protests that are happening in Birmingham about children learning about the existence of gay people and trans people, and people are protesting this, and they've been doing it for a while now, and the protests are actually just getting bigger, they're not stopping, and it fascinates me.
They're protesting against, isn't it? It's the Sex and Health something 2020.
Yeah.
2019 is coming in 2020.
I didn't get specific about it, but there you go. Good. But that's essentially it. But specifically, I know this for a fact, the first protests were about a school that were teaching equality, and they were protesting about the inclusion of one book. And this one book had two female protagonists who turned out were in a relationship. Mm-hmm. But it was really like innocuous. It was like Sheila and Janine go to the shops.
Is that a spoiler?
About the book?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, they go to the shops. That's it.
I was reading that.
It wasn't like Sheila. It wasn't like Sheila and Janine look at each other out. It wasn't like explicit.
That's another book I've got.
And they were like, and lots of people.
Yeah.
And lots of people from the Muslim community were like, well, this goes against our teaching. We want to teach our kids about gay people in secondary school, and it's just like, there's not one real argument for this protest that held water, and I feel really disgusted by our politicians, specifically the local politicians, and also education authorities who aren't just sort of being a bit more aggressive with their defence of these schools. Because
I was aware of the protests originally, but I didn't understand that they'd continued and
yeah, they're
got
continuing.
bigger.
Yeah.
Okay.
They spread to another school recently, and it's the same thing. It's like, we want to teach our kids about gay people when we want to, and it's like, what, do you turn the TV off every time George Michael's on it? Like, it's like, get over yourselves, all right?
Well, why are they protesting that and not other subjects?
Because they're homophobic.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's what it goes down to. They're not there going, well, I think you'll find that we should only do the 12 times table when they're in year 7. It's always to do with which is biology, and it's a science. It should be taught.
Yeah.
And health and safety, because a lot of this particular law that's coming in, as you say, it's not their teaching technique.
Oh, absolutely. If you read a book, I read Miffy to my daughter, right? I'm telling you right now, there's a bit in it, I'm not lying, there's a bit in this Miffy book where Mr. Miffy and Mrs. Miffy make the Miffy that we know. But in the book, it's described as like an angel coming down from the sky. But we all know that's a euphemism for sex, right? And I'm like... I mean,
Mr. and Mrs. Miffy make the Miffy that we know.
Yeah, but this is in the book.
That is completely inoffensive as a sentence, but sounds more disgusting than anything I've whispered to someone on Snapchat.
They're not called... they're not called Mr. and Mrs. Miffy. I just don't know Miffy's surname.
Okay.
But the point I'm making is, in this book, it shows you how Miffy came to be, and I'm like, well, why don't you protest that? Because there's two rabbits clearly making another rabbit, and like, anyway, the point I'm making is, we're not thinking about sex when we think about it when it's a man and a woman, or in effect, or I don't know what a male rabbit's called versus a female rabbit. Didn't do my research. Anyway, but
I think they're both just rabbits.
They're just.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The hair is a different...
Because like, when you've got a deer, you've got like a doe and whatever you call a male deer.
A female deer.
Yeah.
We all know this song. We all know this song.
Handy little rhyme for us all to remember the gender.
Yeah, that's why I know a doe's called a female deer. I know no other female animal, like, name.
Cow.
Heifer.
I
do know.
Cow, this is the worst game show I've ever been on. Cobs and pens.
How would you solve it then?
How would I solve it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd get I would
say Jess Phillips before when you talk about MPs.
Jess Phillips is one of them, and there's another guy. So this new school is under another constituency whose name another MP's constituency. How will I solve it? I'd get all the MPs who represent those schools to kind of be really clear that the schools are doing nothing wrong, and if anything, the schools are benefiting those people within society. I would get Department of Education to be more forthright with their defence of the schools, and I would probably get more LGBTQI plus advocates to speak on the issue as well who were in the area. I would just basically do everything in my power to support the school. That's not happening at the moment, which is really frustrating.
The law, because I read bits on it a few weeks ago when it first started, and it is giving a lot more power to the head teachers. Whilst also saying that head teachers do need to take into account people's religious beliefs, but their religious beliefs are not the be-all and end-all. Yep. So it is literally, I mean, that comes in 2020. When that does come in, then potentially the schools will have a lot more backing to just say, this is happening because it's here to protect. That's what it is. It's there to teach that children are that everyone's equal, even if they look different. And it's also there to teach children how to protect themselves online and stuff like that, with grooming and everything else. What's a good relationship? What's a toxic relationship? Issues with family members. It's there. It suggests to me that these people care more about their religion than their children, which, I mean...
Well, they're being, what's the word I'm looking for? They're just being, when someone like exaggerates, hysterical. They're being absolutely hysterical, and it's embarrassing. I feel embarrassed as a human, really, because what they're showing is a lack of respect to the humanity of people. Like, we don't want our children to know gay people exist. Well, I've got news for you. By protesting, you pretty much confirmed their existence.
Yeah, they will find. They will find out.
They will find out. All you got to do is turn on the TV. You get onto a bus and see two men holding hands. Pick up a. I'm sure they're too young for this, but they might one day pick up a James Baldwin book. And they're,
why are you protesting this, Daddy? Because Daddy is sexually frustrated.
Yeah.
It's one of those. It's such a difficult area, I think, particularly for the UK, because it's religious freedoms versus actual state law, and obviously in this country the Queen is the head of the church and the head of the state.
Yes,
if I'm correct. So as just specifically the UK, our relationship to this is very confused. But I do find it funny, just sort of people outside of school going, we don't want them to be exposed to LGBTQIA people because that'll indoctrinate their minds into a weird way of thinking, said religious people.
Yes.
That'll get them behaving in strange ways, said religious people. That'll make them dress weird and say weird things.
I personally don't think that you should you should be able to say that any child is of any religion until they're 16. They get to decide themselves.
Yes, I agree with you.
Well, that happens anyway. So many people change their religion. So many people are lapsed Catholics, lapsed Muslims, lapsed Christians. And you have to allow children to be that. That's a good point.
You can't force it on. Because the thing is everyone who... every child who says, oh, this is a Muslim child, this is a Christian child, this is a Jewish child, they're not. You've told them what they are.
Yeah, they're born into it. I could easily have been a Jewish person. If I was born,
throw that in there.
If I was born to different, that is literally how it works. My auntie could have been my uncle if she had bollocks.
I could have been a Chinese wrestler given different circumstances.
This is like that tweet that went around that like, Liverpool could have won the league if 40 yarders counted as 2 goals.
If reality was different and different things happened, another outcome would have occurred. It's like,
right, I think that's the end of that story. Yourself, what story you got? Oh, we solved it. We solved it.
You really should take over Hugh Edwards' job. Just go, right, I think that's the end of that. Now the weather. Who's going to be the next Prime Minister, Ashley?
Oh, Christ.
It's a selection of top people from the Conservative Party.
Because May resigned. I didn't feel sorry for her.
No, and people going, oh, she's crying. Oh, can you at least relate to that on a human level? Well, I could relate to that on a human level, but she's divorced herself from her humanity deliberately by behaving the way Conservative Party politicians do, and also just completely hostile policies to those who needed help from their state.
I agree she's an absolute wretched human being. The only bit of the argument that annoys me is when people on Twitter are going, oh, you didn't cry over Grenfell, you didn't cry over this, you didn't cry over this, didn't cry over this. And they go, well, mate, neither did you. Like, who the fuck are you to say? You weren't there. The majority of people on Twitter weren't in tears over fucking Grenfell. When a baby was washed up on the shore, you weren't in fucking tears over that. You just want to be morally superior without doing the fucking working. Yes, she is an awful, horrible piece of human waste. I wouldn't fucking piss on her if she asked. She's absolutely disgusting. Every single one of her policies...
You would.
No,
I
wouldn't.
It's normally if she was on fire, not like...
I would not pass up the opportunity to decorate an ex-Prime Minister.
She is utter scum. She is devoid of anything that even resembles fucking emotion, apart from if it's about her. And that's it. That's why she cried. Yeah. That's why she cried, because we only cry when it's something that's actually personal to us.
Speaking of, LGBT issues, she literally sent LGBT people to their deaths by
refusing. Oh no, she told them to act straight,
She told there's those guidelines. Yep. Yeah, I don't know how you act straight.
Put on a Jamaican accent and act straight.
I saw that. Yeah,
that's always gone badly for me. I've not passed it either.
And that's why I lost my job.
that reggae disco. What the most confused musical outfit ever. Is it reggae or is it disco? I'm gay.
It's reggae disco. Yeah. Risco.
Yeah.
So she's gone June the 7th. Although she'll stay on until we found someone new.
Yeah.
What?
So she'll be here till 2025.
When you're like about to leave your job and you're going to leave, she won't be answering emails. She'll be just chilling out, really.
The only bit I feel sorry for her about is that she's still going to be in power when Trump comes over on a 3rd.
Oh,
she has to deal with that. Although hopefully she absolutely fucking rinses the prick. Just going along, oh yeah, right, I know, I've got everything planned for you. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to go to McDonald's and then you're going to get on a plane and fuck off back.
That, to be honest, that's probably what you want. He'd be like, oh my god, Theresa May's amazing.
A last-ditch attempt to gain some public sympathy is she goes, I've got one chance to do this.
Just fucking nuts him.
Yeah.
Just goes along, fat prick, bang.
She suddenly becomes Ben Kingsley from Sexy Beast. You fucking just...
That's what I want.
Shave the red.
Kick Boris Johnson in the bollocks, nut Trump, just for the final thing she does while she still has power, revoke Article 50, and then just bowls off.
She goes, Mr. Trump, if you'd just like to come into this room, and she opens the door and Trump just falls into a giant milkshake.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. I'd like him to take her to I'd like her to take him to the most liberal place, like Islington or something, because they'd hate him. They'd throw their lattes at him.
No, they wouldn't throw lattes because lattes are hot,
and expensive.
I mean, they'd chuck away 5 guy milkshakes at people, I don't think they're too worried about that. So
they blow the cream at him.
Yeah.
The latte.
So which cunt are we going to have then? Is it going to be? Is it going to be?
This is the worst game show I've ever been on.
Is it going to be Boris Johnson, who has all the empathy of a rapist serial killer?
Boris Johnson this is not news to anyone. Boris Johnson is one of the most poisonous and dangerous people in British politics, possibly ever.
Yeah, agreed.
And I am fucking astounded by how many people would like him to be Prime Minister, just members of the public.
Oh, that is a reason to remove universal suffrage. You just don't deserve the vote. Like, I don't think this man could have done more throughout his career to prove himself to be racist, ignorant, careerist, selfish, uninterested in the betterment of society for all. And yet people still are like, well, he looked. He you know, he did that thing before the Olympics where he did like an aerial slide.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and, you know, the guys. That's him saying, "I can do what the fuck I like." That's
Yeah,
him.
but, I mean,
He's trolling us.
And then the entire world, it stopped him on. They stopped gravity. Just to show that he couldn't do what the fuck he liked. I can do what the fuck I like, and then the world goes, no, you can't.
Yeah.
You're stuck now, prick. So that's the world saying, mate, you've got no chance.
As it happens, I don't think he's gonna win.
Well, I mean, history has suggested that the favourite rarely wins in these things.
Yeah.
He is the favourite.
And I do think that he has sufficiently pissed off enough people within the Tory party to make it pretty hard for him to actually become leader.
Favourite thing I've written about Boris Johnson was last year's show, and I described him as the final weep of cum after a buggering trickling down the face of a boarding school child, which I think sells him perfectly. I think that's him.
You know what? I think you were robbed when they gave that poet laureate to that other guy.
I just don't like thinking of common children, but whatever.
show me a better description of him.
Just cunt will do, you know.
Fucking tub of ice cream with a haircut. That's all he is.
See, this is why you get all the big gigs and no one fucking listens to me. You know?
Yeah, that's why I get all the big gigs.
like that, not like this.
I would sorry
Boris
to
Johnson.
Final thought on Boris. I would like to know why the people of it's Uxbridge is his constituency, isn't he? I think it is.
Yeah.
I really want to know why they keep voting for him.
Well, they vote Tory, so they'll vote for whoever. It's a safe seat.
Yeah.
So sometimes we overthink personality.
But he can't be a good MP. He can't be a good MP.
That's the problem with first past the post. You know, it's a safe seat. They don't put anyone in.
And that's for MPs. Most people don't most people don't write to their MPs. Most people don't rely on them, so they don't care. To be honest, they just want to vote Conservative.
Yeah. Blame the council if something into the
bit of money in Uxbridge, so it matters less.
A bit of money in Uxbridge, yeah. Not that I've ever been there.
Doesn't matter who your MP is.
It's the wrong end of shitty end of London.
Oh, you got him. You've got Dominic Raab.
He seems like a nice fella.
Is it Rab or Rob?
Honestly, it
so
does
many
not matter.
A's. Is it Rob? Like Saab?
No, I think it doesn't. You can call him whatever you like.
I think we need more politicians that sound like bad guys from Indiana Jones films.
Yeah.
I think this is the man who didn't know how important Dover was for the crossing to France.
Yeah.
This man is so thick as
Clearly
shit.
never done a booze cruise.
Yeah. He's basically come out with W. Bush's, a lot of our imports come from overseas. He's basically done that.
Yeah.
But because he's private school educated, I'm making an assumption there, people have given him an excuse.
Yeah, well, this shows you how fucking ignorant they are and delusional. They have no idea how to... And he was negotiating Brexit.
Yeah.
He was negotiating it for a year. What was you negotiating?
Turns out Dover's quite important.
Yeah.
Really, Dominic?
What the hell was you negotiating?
He negotiated, then he voted against it. You know, his negotiations. He went, no, I don't like this. You did it. No.
Yeah, it was remarkable.
And then went on and said how he could have done it better. They're going, yeah, but it was you. It was you, mate.
I do that at a lot of my gigs as well.
Yeah.
I walk off a vote against myself.
You got him, you got Boris, you've got, who else has chucked their name in?
Jeremy.
Jeremy Hunt.
Surely I think he is one of the sort of senior Tories that the general public really does not like.
You would like to think so. Jeremy Hunt this week has created a new role of Ambassador for Human Rights, which is sweetness. You know, it's
what would that person do? What would be their job?
I assume they're there to fucking take it on the chin whenever they go to see fucking Saudi Arabia to sell more weapons. You know, I think that's what they're there. Yeah. They're very much. I assume they're going to be there as some sort of barrier to take all the cum shots, so fucking Hunt doesn't have to spend more money on dry cleaning.
Yes.
That'd be my guess.
There's a theme running through your poetry, isn't there? Actually? Kind of feeling like something's been suppressed.
I'm just sick to death of us fucking bending over for a little bit of fucking power every time that someone bombs the fuck out of Yemen.
Still, I mean, you know, if you're sort of as malevolent as Jeremy Hunt, you know, why not double down and then just become a supervillain?
It's just the idea of doing deals with the likes of China, because recently people are people who go and look to bring in money to this country. They had a big thing over in China, and we'd go to China, and China have 3 million Muslims in re-education camps.
Yeah, Rohingya.
Yeah, it's I mean, re-education camps, interesting name for concentration camps, but you got that, and we do it with them, with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
We want to do a deal with America, which is just going to... You think TTIP was bad? This is going to make TTIP look like a great fucking idea. And this is where we're at, because we're so nationalistic. We think that we're going to do all of these deals with all of these people, and we complain about human rights violations, and then we ignore them because we realise that money takes away any care that we actually have for making the world better.
Oh, you're totally right, and what you've said actually, like
Pete, just very quickly, where she said I'm totally right, we can start that on every show. That'd be lovely, thank you.
You're a bit right. No, you on this point you're totally right, and this is one of the reasons why I didn't support what the cultural boycott of Israel that people were talking about with Eurovision and stuff. Because I was like, if you want to boycott countries that are like incredibly problematic and harmful, you're just gonna be sat in your house. You won't leave your house. You won't turn on your TV. You won't pick up your phone. You won't watch YouTube. You'd have to evict yourself, just deport yourself from the UK.
Yeah.
We're responsible for so much, and money does talk, unfortunately. That's why we go to poor countries and we say, oh, your governments are homophobic, you're doing this, you're doing that, but we have nothing to say when the countries are rich. It's disgusting.
Well, weapons are our biggest export, aren't they?
They bring in the third amount of most money into this country, I believe.
What's number 2? Is it Coldplay?
I think so. And number 1 is finance. Because we are the financial capital of the world.
And that's normally linked to oppressive things anyway.
Well, we are the money laundering... London is the money laundering capital of the world.
Exactly.
Tons of dodgy money comes through.
I do think, just on that subject briefly, I do think that the global financial implications of Britain leaving the EU are somewhat underplayed.
Oh, it's going to be absolutely massive. I mean, you're going to have people... it's already doing. Financial firms are moving over to Amsterdam. You got Frankfurt.
But if there's real problems with the City of London, given the far-right populism we've got all over Europe at the moment, that could be a really, really bad sort of triggering event. Just something properly
What would it
going
trigger?
wrong in the city. Well, another massive economic depression when we've got this much far-right populism around. That's how global.
Oh yeah, because people are thick, aren't they? So they'll be like,
start.
"Oh, we're poor. All right, well, we don't like people aren't British anymore." That thing.
Yeah.
Blame the elites.
Yeah.
They're going, blame the elites.
But it's elites or foreigners, isn't it? It's
well, yes.
Yeah.
But populism, especially like to what Farage, because Farage is no longer talking about immigration. For all the Brexit party stuff for the European elections.
Farage doesn't talk about anything anymore.
Yeah.
He talks about us and them. He's literally boiled it down to us and them.
That is pure populism. That's what populism is. That is all populism. Populism is there just going, well, us, ordinary, wonderful, working class, hard-working people, and them, the corrupt elite. And especially with someone like Farage, going the EU fraud department considering investigating him for the £450,000 he got from Aaron Banks to pay for his fucking life.
Yeah.
He earns... What is it? Because the pound's done so badly and he gets paid in euros, he's making more money now for the fact of his MEP, which is just delightful.
Thank you, Mr. Juncker.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you should say thank you.
Yeah, you literally should. You are the worst fucking MEP in the world, and you get money and it's
like you don't want to be there.
Yeah,
you literally slag off your workplace. You made a career out of slagging off your workplace. It's disgusting.
It's 600 and something. I think it's 6k plus he makes a month from doing nothing, knowing little about fish. That is him, because he's on the fish committee, and he also does the fishery committee, and he also does groups with all the far right. He did with UKIP.
It's really interesting what you're saying, because it's kind of contradictory, because there is something to be said about the role of MEPs and how they get compensated for what they do, bearing in mind that we're all up until this point in time. I never voted in the European elections before. I let them pass me by. I was like, Pah.
Well, it's a problem with this country as a whole with the European elections, because in the rest of Europe, MEPs are respected. You have like ex-presidents going in to become MEPs. You've got people with actual experience, actual knowledge, people who can speak a number of languages.
There's the problem.
MPs are in the rest of Europe consider going to become an MEP as a promotion.
Yeah.
That's
true.
where we're at in this country. Because in this country you got MPs who look at MEPs like they're shit. They go, well, MEPs actually have a lot more power and say than you as a fucking.
We treat Europe like we treat the MLS in football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like I remember when we sent Neil Kinnock there to like die. Like, that's what we do. We used to send our loser MPs to Europe to do paperwork, and it is true. It does have it has an image problem, and I think that was the main problem with the Remain campaign. Like, you might like the EU, but the rest of us, we kind of like don't really know what it is and what it does. And
I think
shame.
possibly one of the problems to do with that is because Britain just had its way over so many things in the EU.
Massively, yeah.
So our MEPs mattered less because it's to us because like, well, we get what we want anyway because we've got a great deal with them.
Yeah.
So it matters less.
So we didn't have to. We had nothing to get emotional about. Like everything. You're totally right. And again, another reason why the Remain campaign was so dumb because all they had to do was say, "But we run Europe." Literally, we run this schoolyard. Why would we leave?
Yeah, we get a vote to say no to so many things it's useful to us to say no to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, the problem is it's like no one cares about facts. It's 75 laws that we had to take from out of 4,000 odd that we did, and those laws were with regards to things like more workers' rights. Let's make
maternity leave.
Things like that. Climate change. let's do something about it. All of these stuff that have been forced onto us.
To be fair,
actually make the world better.
Climate change, like this country kind of sucks. We could do with a little bit of this kind of weather, you know.
Oh no! I mean, I'm happy to get a tan as the world burns. You know, that's what I've always hoping for.
As a pasty, long-haired Englishman, I hate this weather. So I can't function, I can't think. It's honestly, I really hate this. It comes round in the summer as well when I have to write Edinburgh shows.
Oh, it literally does come round in the summer, yeah.
Yeah, it's notorious for that hot weather. Remember that one year it came around in the winter, Ashley?
This is a diversion, but most of the time, a lot of pasty, long-haired white guys are like, I can't stand the weather. It's like, how the fuck did anyone colonise anywhere? I've only ever... Because every time I see a picture of a colonialist...
Because they had shade and we wanted shade. We said, can I have that shade, please? And they said, that's our shade.
There must have been... We're just not made out of the same stuff anymore, are we?
Yeah.
Like, pull yourself together, man. Go colonise the Canary Islands.
Go invade Greenwich. Go on.
Yeah.
It's very strange. It is very strange. You had the Human Rights Watch have accused the UK government of breaking its international duty to keep people from hunger, because of the rise in child hunger in schools and the like. How would we look at? First off, are they right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
My mother's a teacher, and it's honestly depressing.
It's bad. Yeah.
How many kids?
I mean, considering the Human Rights Watch are normally there to condemn people like Myanmar and Haiti for genocide and ethnic cleansing, they go, actually, you know what? Also, UK, stop.
A country as rich and supposedly as together as we are.
Yes.
And you're not feeding your children.
We had the UN report this week as well. Did anyone have a look at that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I read it.
No.
Front to back. Front to back, I read it. Yeah. But I'm going to hear what you think about it first.
Well, it's the final one, and it basically says that we're breaking human rights laws because of austerity, which they've said in the past is against human rights, and we are allowing a growth in child poverty, which is expected to reach 40% by 2021. And you've got rise of food banks, which of course, as we know, is Dominic Raab said that was because people have cash flow problems, which is actually right. They do have a cash flow problem.
Yeah, and it's horrific.
They've got no cash.
Because not to interrupt you, but the crazy thing about this is that food actually isn't that expensive in this country. You can buy a bag of carrots for 50p. You know, you can buy a loaf of bread for 50p. So when people can't afford the cheapest food in this country, we've got a real problem. Like it's and it's pure. The biggest thing is universal credit doesn't work.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't, and the administration behind it doesn't work. So people are getting it taken away from them because they don't meet the criteria. But also people who do meet the criteria aren't getting their money. Yeah. Right.
Well, you've got a 5-week delay.
Right.
Before you get any of it.
Yeah, and there's people. You know, people live in hand to mouth. So you take away 5 weeks of money from them. That's their rent. That's their bills.
It's a huge amount of time when you're living. You know.
But you can take a loan out that the government will give you, and then if you take that loan out, then all you have to do is get less money from the universal credit because you're paying back the loan. It's a wonderful way of keeping people lower and lower. And the thing that people say about food banks, what people always miss is that you have to be recommended to a food bank.
Yes,
you can't just stroll up and go. Oh, mate, like, that's the thing where people say, oh, well, people just go there because it's easier. Like, oh, yeah, that's where you get all the best foie gras. Like, no, you go there because you go to a doctor, you go to a mental health consultant or something like that, or social services and something. So I can't afford to feed myself, I can't afford to feed my family or anything else. And then they recommend you to a food bank.
You go to a food bank.
But this is all intentional.
Several professionals have said you need the support.
Exactly.
This is all intentional, and I've felt this since 2010. I've always felt that everything the government has done has been to depress workers' wages and to have more workers willing to work for less money. I've always seen this strategy through everything they've done, and this is just a continuation of that. They want to make poor people so desperate that when we do finally leave the EU and we do need fruit pickers or we do need cleaners, these are the individuals that will have to. That's the plan. That's the plan.
But even with that, they won't earn enough to get out. You've got two-thirds of people on universal credit. You've got two-thirds of people on universal credit that are working.
In all, you work in finance, right? So you
no.
Oh no,
we can't. Oh, gonna have. I do. All. I mean, my job is I do a job outside of comedy is I do contract work for financial firms dealing with risk management,
right?
To make sure that clients don't lose too much money.
So you're not a cunt.
I mean, well, no. I mean, I am, but not because of that.
Oh, okay, fine. He's a nice guy. Can I look into the camera to reassure people you're a nice guy?
No, don't. You know, you're there. Why don't you tell everyone my fucking address while we're at it? You know, while we're here.
The one thing Ashley does not want is somebody turning to the camera and saying he's a nice guy. Really,
I mean, that would ruin it. That would absolutely ruin it.
He made me a coffee. Isn't that nice? I came in and I was like, you know what? I know I asked for orange juice, but I'm super sleepy. I was up all night with my kid, and he was like, oh yeah, I'll make you a coffee. And do you want sugar? And I was like, yeah, I'd like some sugar. And he gave it to me. It's here. Look, I'm not gonna look at the camera. I'm just gonna show it to the camera. Yeah.
Ashley gave me a kidney once.
Don't take it. I'll take your kidney. I've seen your lifestyle. But look, I'll get back to it. You don't work in finance, but as someone who's very intelligent, right, you will know that if a country has a load of workers on low wages who are able to do lots of work, so what happens to credit rating? Because and also,
the problem is people talk about the credit rating and no one actually understands it. The credit rating means nothing. Okay. The credit rating means literally, absolutely, 100% nothing. It doesn't truly affect the borrowing costs of anything. It is something that's there for people to make it seem like it's something.
You're right, and I think what I meant to say is if you're a business and you want to start a business somewhere and you want to build a factory, where are you going to build it? You're going to build it where there's going to be a bunch of people who are going to work in it. And I think that was always the government strategy, but I think it's obviously gone wrong because now everyone's leaving because of Brexit.
Well, people are leaving through European Union. People are leaving. However, migration isn't dropping to the 100,000 level that they want. And if it did drop to the 100,000 level that they want, then the country would fucking stop.
What about businesses? Are they leaving?
Businesses are leaving, but financial businesses are leaving because you want to be close to. You want to be in the EU.
Yeah.
So you want to be at a place where you've got regulatory convergence, and you also want to be able to go, so they'll like move over to Ireland or Amsterdam because they speak English there. The US speaks English there. In Japan, English is the universal business language. But you also want to be under ESMA rulings.
What's that?
ESMA rulings as new rulings that came out in last August that overtook MiFID, which was previous EU regulations protecting clients more, but it's allowing for passporting and everything else to be able to move money freely.
Right.
All have the same regulation, all has the same protection for clients and for businesses.
Can I just relate to what Athena was saying? Because I think it's very interesting, the idea that people's wages have been deliberately suppressed to take over the jobs that immigrants don't want to would fill those roles. I don't know. I often feel like sort of stupidity is often possibly a better explanation than a deliberate motivation. But what I would say is that it's fundamental to the way the British Conservative Party wants to run the country is they don't want social mobility. They've never wanted social mobility. They've never wanted working class people graduating to the middle classes, and they don't want people moving around the class system. That's fundamental to how they've always approached running the UK.
It's the same reason why if you have a look at our wage growth, we have every so often we'll have success, wage growth is up 1%, which is lower than what the average was before the 08 crash. We are still below where we were in the 08 crash. And what annoys me, and that's with like wage growth, everything else that goes along with it, and what annoys me with it is that we see like 1% as it's success.
Yeah.
They're going, but it's not. Historically, that's not successful. That is shit.
Well, it's spin, isn't it? It's spin, and we are now consuming news lacking in context more than ever. And it's a real big issue, the lack of education that we have in terms of receiving information.
I think the lack of education in just common sense maths, because they're going, what if you do -1, -1, -1, -1, -2, -3, -1, -1, -1, +2, you're still fucking down. They're going, we're up by 2. No, you're down, mate. You're down.
Speaking on those two things, I'd forgotten the elections that occurred just before the most recent EU elections.
Local elections.
Local elections. So, overwhelmingly, like if you put all the votes together, people are voting for parties and individuals who are pro-Remain in terms of the EU.
Majority, yes.
But the largest single majority party is an anti-EU party. So on the news, and senior politicians then, I don't know if I've articulated this well enough, but
who was the biggest? Because Conservatives were the biggest, but they got an absolute destruction, so they didn't actually gain anything.
So they were the biggest, and they lost. But majority of people voting are voting for either individuals or parties. Yeah. If we actually had the numbers together, and senior politicians in both the two main parties and people in our media are going, well, this is a clear sign to get on with Brexit. And you go, this is a denial of reality.
Yes, but we have a denial of reality.
I really,
for years.
I've sat down with intelligent people who have articulated their good and honest reasons for wanting to leave the EU, and this was,
and they're
years
all
ago,
wrong.
Months and years ago now. Now it just feels like a death cult.
Oh, yeah,
it's honestly, it's like reading about Jim Jones. Just what's going on. It's such a blinkered. We're all going over the cliff together.
It's all this kind of if we don't leave the EU, we make a mockery of democracy. It's like,
and you go, well, why don't you bring up illegal interfering in elections? The fact that 3 million people who are British citizens who live in the EU were denied a vote in the first place, which to me, just as a pure democratic thing, makes the vote completely referendum, not a vote, makes it completely illegitimate because possibly the people it affects the most weren't allowed to cast their opinion.
We had that yesterday. It's Saturday now, isn't it? Yeah, Thursday. You had potentially, another million plus EU citizens who were unable to vote
and
because of the fuck up.
It would have been impossible for them to vote. Because apparently the day the elections were announced was the deadline for them to fucking register.
Yeah.
So this is, this is conspiratorial. This is quite clearly conspiratorial.
It's disenfranchisement, isn't it? That's what we're doing. We're saying, right, you lot aren't allowed to vote. It's the same as what happens with black people in America.
Oh yeah, anyone with a criminal record in America.
Yeah, you're just there going, well, I mean, now you need ID and all of this stuff, and you need to be able to backflip before you're able to vote. And can you
stuff that costs money and takes time, and there's reasons why you might not want to.
Just can you name the previous 5 actors of Doctor Who and all of this stuff before you're able to vote? It's ridiculous. With the EU elections, from what I've seen so far, there's a suggestion that we're going to be at 38% of people voting.
I'm not surprised.
Is it really that little?
Yes. It's the second most over the past 20 years, I think. That's always got me when you see newspaper headlines. 60% of people say that they will refrain from voting in the European elections. They go, what, we're going to have 40%? Well, fuck me, aren't we doing well this time?
Yeah.
This is it. I mean, last time, 2014, we had something like 32% of people voting. And this is why the likes of Farage can actually get anywhere.
Yeah.
Simple reason, because the nutters who support this prick are going to go out and vote.
Yeah.
They go, what we needed is the young, the ones who kept going on and going, oh, well, we didn't get a say. This is your time then. This is your time to fucking rise up.
We've got to... I always feel quite strongly about us talking about people who don't vote. I think you have to talk about the politicians whose job it is to motivate people to vote. And quite frankly, I only got Brexit literature through my door. I didn't get literature from any other party in my door.
Got was Brexit Party and UKIP.
Yeah, exactly. So this says something, okay? And I was kind of passively monitoring just the media going up towards the election, and it was mostly Brexit. And I saw Jeremy Corbyn in a factory every now and again, and I didn't. So even if you are pro-Remain, you're not even going to be motivated to go to vote in the election. Who cares about you and what you care about? Like, no one.
Yeah, I mean, our media does need to do better, certainly. And questions need to be asked. Like the Brexit Party, it's the Electoral Commission has visited and considering doing more investigations into the amount of money that Brexit Party has received.
But I feel, again, I've got an opinion on all these investigations into funding and things like that. No one cares.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you care or not. It's whether or not.
But you can't impact the parties.
Yeah, but you cannot claim that you want democracy or claim to love democracy or anything else and say that you don't care about this. This is the fun. This is pure importance.
I personally care, but I worry that people who are against the Brexit Party think, oh well, the Electoral Commission will do our job for us. Like, they won't. Even after, like, they demonstratively cheated during the referendum campaign, right? People are still voting for them.
Yes.
So the Remain protagonists, if you want to call them, advocates for Remain, are relying on these kind of legal facts and loopholes and realities to kind of do their job for them, and it's really frustrating.
Can I just say, on the subject of deliberate intentions, once you start picking away at the thread about the legality of how elections are conducted in this country, and particularly the funding by which those elections are promoted, once you start picking away at that thread, any political party, pretty much any political party in the UK, they need to keep that stuff shady, because if you actually pull that thread properly...
so that's why they've been a bit quiet about it. Like,
that's why Labour keep quiet about it. That's why the Conservatives keep quiet about it. It's not conspiratorial. It's there. You can read it in the newspaper, and you go,
they get fined. Labour were fined 10k a couple of months ago for not doing their account in time.
Yes, what a major blow for that political party. What a major blow for the Conservatives when they get fined. We need better systems to hold political parties
we certainly
accountable.
need more stuff.
Finding them doesn't work, particularly when it's about overspending. Oh, you overspent. Give us more money that you definitely have. Yeah. Okay, fine. We budgeted for that.
But something like Cambridge Analytica, and AIQ and all of that, that is breaking laws, and it shouldn't have to take Canada and their government doing doing the hard graft that we should be doing. When you've got someone like fucking Mark Zuckerberg, who we say, well, we want to have a word with you, and he's fuck you.
But again, you know, the reasons that major political parties won't actually properly concentrate on the electoral process and people voting is because it creates problems with their legitimacy.
Right.
And if you start picking away at that thread, then anyone in any kind of power in the UK starts to look a bit shaky.
Yeah.
Which is why we need to rejig the system. Also,
what do you rejig it to?
Fuck knows, mate. It's the honest answer. But I you know, I can see when something's not working, but I can build a better
proportional representation. That's what I'd start with.
Would you?
Yes, and then although we did have the AV vote back in 2010.
Yeah, but that was.
Yeah, well, I mean, Miliband was unwilling to share a stage with Clegg.
Oh, sorry, I forgot the second part of my point. On the subject of sinister motivations. In terms of people not turning out to vote and things, there have been too many moves by the two main political parties in this country to suggest that what they're actually waiting for is for things to get really shit to either completely consolidate or grab and consolidate power. I personally get the sense from both the Labour and the Tory party that they're waiting for things to go properly down the toilet and then make a real power grab.
Well, I mean, the Tories doing austerity, you could argue that that came from the 2008 crash.
Yeah.
Things were getting bad. They knew this was the time to really fucking ram it home, because what they want is to... Well, I mean, austerity is basically just giving away your responsibilities to other people. That's all it is. Saying, I don't want to do any work today. You do this, you do this, you do this, and you do this on your way. You know, it's all yours now. Whereas there's an argument to be made on the Labour side that they want disaster for disaster socialism. Have the world destroy, have the country on fire. Once the country's on fire, they can come along saying the only thing that will save you is my idea on socialism. And socialism, delightful idea, you know. I think it's a pretty idea. History suggests that it does not work. The reason it doesn't work is because, one, people are greedy, and two, people are fucking greedy.
And also lazy, because not being funny, but like, I've worked in the public sector. I don't want you running my trains. But this is a real problem. Like, there's an issue. I think the concept is good, but then you have to have expertise. Okay, and then if you want expertise, you've got to pay for it. So, you know, and the idea of
and the moment anyone has expertise, they are then the elite.
Right, exactly. So nationalism is really, or nationalising things is very complex. But you're totally right. When everything's burning, people will say, okay, we'll nationalise that then. And then, you know, it'll be fine for maybe the first few years. And then, you know, people get greedy. You know, public sector pensions are a big issue. I know someone who got an 80 grand redundancy payoff. Civil servant. 80 grand redundancy payoff.
Nice.
Yeah.
How long were they in the job for, though?
Long enough. 15, 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if that was the private sector, they would have never had to work again.
Yeah. But it's anyway, the point I'm making is nationalising stuff is a solution, but it's not the only solution. It should be case-by-case basis.
Oh, certainly.
And as an ideology, is really dangerous because you're just doing it without actually properly... So NHS should always be publicly owned.
Yes.
Always. You know, it should never go into private hands. You know, absolutely. Trains, I don't know, because we didn't run them very well when we had them. So...
Well, I mean, train situation is really complicated, isn't it?
Super complicated, but it's like, it's not to say nationalise, it should be an investigation into nationalising.
But we can do, because we had Eastern Rail was under our stewardship. This was only a few years ago, and then I think we privatised it in 2015, and at this point the government was making £1 billion a year from it.
Yeah.
And then we decided to nationalise it for some reason, because austerity is based on the idea that for every pound we spend, we get less back, and so that's why you get rid of it, which isn't the case. It's fundamentally flawed. If every pound we spend, we can get 1.75 back for that type of thing. We should constantly keep it. And once we privatised it, it went down.
Yeah.
And then, because all train firms are, subsidy-backed companies. They write contracts where they're unable to lose money, and so the people who pay for them is us, and we pay for them in 7-8 different ways. And then when they're at a loss, that little loss, the government comes in and tops them up. Fucking ridiculous.
We're paying for our own public transport through the nose, through tax. Then we pay absolutely ridiculous prices to actually travel around this very small, rich country. And then the process of renationalising it is so complicated because the track and the individual train companies are owned by different companies, and different countries owned by companies owned by different countries.
Yeah, we're fine with nationalisation as long as it's not our country.
Yeah, but it's such a clusterfuck, and it's, honestly, it's such a. It feels whenever I get into this, it feels like such a middle-aged person's thing to complain about. But the fact that we are such a small, rich country, and it costs so much to get from place to place.
No, it massively annoys me too. Like the fact you have to do everything 3 months in advance, and there's like 20 tickets to choose from.
Yeah, and again, it always lands on the heads of poor people.
Yeah, and then you even look at the little things like bus routes, and bus routes get changed. So then you've got these old pensioners who only have like one bus an hour, and that's the only bus I can get back in the thing. And they say, well, no, not enough people are using that.
Yeah.
It's gone. They're going, well, this is ridiculous. That's the only way they've got to get into the city, so they don't just live on their own, die on their own, rot on their own, and fucking come back as a haunted ghoul to attack Aviva.
I would prefer to sit next to a ghost than most people on Arriva trains and buses.
You said something really interesting there. The business of Brexit has totally taken really important things off the agenda. Like, we should be talking about bus routes. We should be talking about mobility for people who don't have cars and for older people. And how much, like, London benefits massively from, like, a very well-subsidised transport system.
Yeah.
That no other city in this country really benefits from.
We should be
really
talking
outrageous.
about. We should be talking about how much austerity has negatively affected so many different parts of the country.
Yeah.
And we're not, because the entire government is tied up in this single
fucking
issue.
around in voting constantly. Do you remember there was a point where they were just constantly voting? Just constantly going in and out of that fucking room. I'd have just said fuck it.
And we also
going back to my constituents.
If we start talking about London for too long, we'll realise how useful economic migrants actually are.
Yeah.
Although we could argue that all economic migrants from Britain who come down to London should go back to their own part of England and make it good again. You know, why don't they do that?
Good. So just to clarify, Ashley advocates going back to the town you came from.
Well, I mean, if this is the argument fucking racists want to make, you got racists who come from all over the country, come down to London to work because there's more money in there. You take your own fucking point, mate.
This is one of the really frustrating things going into the election, is that you've got fucking Farage going, bro, nobody wants to talk about immigration, bro. Whereas he made it for years the number one thing that people wanted to talk about, and nobody was talking about it in a considered manner, going, it brings so much money into the country. However, there are people in certain communities in certain parts of the country where they get a sudden influx of people with a particular skill set, so they get sort of for example, if you're in town A and you are a builder, and suddenly you get an influx of immigrants who can do your job cheaper than you are going to be undercut in your service, and so those immigrants, it could be potentially more useful to them and the country as a whole to just be in a different area of the country and also protect people in their local industries.
All studies have shown that immigration does not affect or has an absolute minimal effect on wages. Doesn't matter what it has.
Or increases them generally, so long as it's applied properly. But it's complicated, and nobody was addressing it as if it was complicated.
Well, I mean, before 2016, only 3% of people thought that the EU was a big deal. So, but that's for another podcast. We're coming towards the end of this. So, do we have any final points?
Yeah, I've got a final point. I feel optimistic, and I didn't bring this up, but socialism's going back in Spain. they had an election a couple of weeks ago and the Socialist Party got voted in, and they have another election and the Socialist Party is going to do well. And what's really cool about it is they beat a right-wing party that used to be a centrist party, and then they were like, actually, let's be more right-wing because we want to, like, you know, fuck shit up. And they got obliterated in these polls. And like, Spain's a country, and this is like a positive.
I mean, we can all agree with that.
But this is, you know, this is because I was in Barcelona at the time of this election, so I thought, I'm going to watch this. It's really interesting. And they've got a far right party called Vox, which is a really cool name for a far right party because you're associated with like Vox, the TV channel. And
yes,
it rhymes with Fox and all this shit. Yeah. Oh, someone did Latin. I could tell you're posh. Is it Latin?
I went to film school.
Not, it does a whole thing.
I went to film
thing
school
about how he's not posh.
Oh, you not? Oh, how
no,
disappointing.
I just have this voice.
You
just went to the wrong area, right school.
I went to film school. Is Vox Pops, Voxus Populus.
Vox Pops. All right, is that what it's short for? Anyway, this is good news.
Be after.
This is good news.
Good news. And Podemos did well as well, didn't they?
They did very well, and I think they're going to do the next. They're going to do like some kind of coalition for the next elections. So it's really cool.
Your final thing. Great, wonderful. Have you got anything to
Forgot anything to plug. Can I?
Yeah,
Was that so can I look at the camera?
Yeah, now
right?
you can. Yeah.
Oh, hello. We weren't allowed to do that. Yeah, I've got my own podcast. I don't talk about politics. It's called Keeping Athena Company. I can talk about politics if someone talks about it, but it's not about politics.
Delightful.
Thank you.
Yourself? Anything to plug?
At Alexi Bennett on Twitter, doing a solo show 7 p.m. At the Waverley Bar in Edinburgh, doing a game show 10:30 p.m. at the Liquid Rooms in Edinburgh, and on the 14th of August doing a charity event for Fair Share, which is a food waste and food bank charity at the Pleasance Grand. Buy tickets for that, for God's sake. I've got 750 seats to fill.
Fantastic. Right, final pieces of news. The Austrian far-right Freedom Party has pulled out of the ruling coalition after two of the party's top figures were caught in a secret video appearing to offer government contracts to a woman who claimed that she was the niece of a Russian oligarch. Ethnic minorities are facing rising and increasing racism. It's up 71% from 58% from 2016. Electoral Commission have visited the Brexit Party, spoke about that. Council election candidate who lost by one vote on a ballot paper that had Brexit written on it, and an arrow is trying to go to court to get that overdone. And what we got, the Pentagon is trying to start a war with Iran because Trump really wants to make everyone who went, yeah, Obama's awful, he's going to be better, want to make them look like fucking idiots. Outsourced workers who clean the civil servants' toilets and desks have started a 4-day strike on Tuesday over missed pay and low payment. Survey showed that British factories suffered biggest fall in orders since 2016, but that has a lot to do with stockpiling before. Brexit Party has now lifted a ban on Channel 4 because they don't want to be seeming too fascist. Campaign Group has uncovered a web of 500 Facebook accounts spreading fake news and hate speech. Research from Autonomy suggests that the UK would need to move to a 9-hour week in an attempt to stop global warming. There was some stuff about British Steel, but that would take longer. Modi is once again the president of India, so that's good for death. 4 pharmaceutical firms have been accused of illegally colluding to restrict supply of an anti-nausea drug where the price went up 700%. That tends to be used to be prescribed to cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy because we're awful people. Could have done some stuff on what deep fakes is, but not enough time, so maybe do that another time.
You know, the "and finally" bit is normally cheerful.
Yeah, and shorter. That was ages.
You could have mentioned a squirrel water
Well,
skiing.
no, because that was the news that we didn't get to.
Oh, okay.
So I go through all the news that I don't get to at the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're just slagging off the end of your show, so...
Yeah.
I mean,
I've come up with my final point now, if there's time.
no, there isn't. Thanks very much. As always, you can catch all my stuff on next up on ashleyhaden.bandcamp.com and all of that. Thanks. Bye. Thanks to the guests.
You're welcome.